In today's episode, I'll be discussing whether or not it is true that Puerto Rico's bloated, huge public sector, supposedly, is one of the main reasons why Puerto Rico is in economic dire straits right now. Hi, my name is Andrew Mercado Vasquez, and welcome to another episode of PRF Review, the show based on the podcast Puerto Rico Forward, which you can listen to on all major platforms, including Spotify, iTunes, and of course you can support on Patreon. Thank you so much to everybody that has been supporting us all this time. It's because of you that this is possible, and I welcome anyone else that can chip in and allow us to really continue this project moving forward, especially with the elections right around the corner, where Puerto Rico needs to really shine as a main concern issue. Okay, with that in mind, let's just jump into the main content of today's episode, because it's going to be short, but I think it's going to be an interesting one. So, about 2 days ago, the Financial Oversight and Management Board actually issued their fiscal plan for the year 2019 for Puerto Rico. What's interesting about this fiscal plan is that it mentions a couple of reasons why the board believes Puerto Rico is in the economic situation it is in today. And among those reasons, of course, the reason that a lot of people have been repeating over and over and over again is big government. The government's too big, it's overbloated, it's not allowing the economy to function properly. Okay, so let's just read straight from the fiscal plan and see what it is that the financial oversight is trying to communicate. I'm going to quote: Puerto Rico has been mired in an economic and demographic downward spiral for over a decade. For decades, the private sector has been overly reliant on now expired federal tax advantages while having to operate in a difficult business climate with poor infrastructure and expensive and unreliable electricity and transit systems. Other challenges include a public sector that is significantly larger than a typical U.S. state, yet often has provided low-quality service, as well as a labor force participation rate that is among the lowest in the world. End of quote. Okay, so you can take each one of those sentences and basically make a whole episode on whether or not it's true, whether or not it is to blame for, in part, for Puerto Rico's economic situation currently. But we're going to focus on that claim of a large government. First off, I'm not totally sold on the idea that just because Puerto Rico's government might be larger compared to other states, it is a reason for the economy to struggle. So that's a premise that you could disagree on. But what you couldn't disagree on is data. Now, let's just go ahead and use some research done by a local economist, an amazing economist, Dr. Jose Caraballo Cueto. I recommend you follow his work. He's on ResearchGate, very accessible, and his awareness of the situation and his awareness of how to manage data and put it together in a way that is understandable is great. So highly recommend Dr. Caraballo Cueto's work. Now, he published a paper titled "From Deindustrialization to Unsustainable Debt: The Case of Puerto Rico." And again, you can look this up on ResearchGate, and you can go ahead and read it straight from the website, researchgate.net. You look them up, or you look up the title of the paper. I believe you can do both. So let's go ahead and go straight to the part that I would like to emphasize from his work. Of course, as an economist, he uses different tools, different types of forms and variables to be able to interpret the economy. So I'm going to be quoting from his paper directly. And I quote: "The control variables were chosen based on the related literature and on hypotheses shared by various ad hoc economic reports on Puerto Rico. We attempt to test all the possible control variables in our model subject to data availability. For instance, it is widely shared belief that the debt problems of the island were brought about by big government. However, The ratio of government workforce to the population 16 and over edged up in 1985, stabilized in 1988 to 2007, with two peaks in 1996 and 2006, and decreased afterwards to a historical low point in 2014, lower than in 1975. So what does this really mean? It means that the size of the government has not been the same throughout this time frame that he's presenting. It has fluctuated. Most of it has been downward. Most of it has been a downward trend of the government becoming smaller and smaller. But that's not it. What if we don't want to just receive this information from one person, even though he's an expert? Okay, well, fine. Let's go ahead and visit the Bureau of Labor Statistics. When you go to this website and you look for Puerto Rico, and you look for the numbers of people that work in the government in Puerto Rico, the BLS actually provides a quick, at a glance view of the last 6 months, last 6 months of data. So they're presenting from October 2018, October, November, December, January 2019, February 2019, and then March 2019, they have preliminary numbers. But when you go to government, the amount of people working in government, what you're seeing also reflects what Dr. Caraballo Cueto was highlighting in his work as well. But more recently, we have these numbers. So we go from October 2018 each month up to March 2019. And what you see is the following. You begin with 203.9 thousand people working in the government. Then you have 202.5 thousand, then 202.6 thousand, 201.9 thousand, 202.5 thousand, and then 201.8 thousand workers in the government. So over the span of 6 months, what we're looking at is a decrease in 4.2%, 5.6%, 5.2%, 5.2% again, 4.1%, and 3.8%. These are decreases that have been going on in the last 6 months alone. But if you want more information, you can use the BLS once more. Go to the data tables, the databases, tables and calculations by subject. You look for Puerto Rico and you specify the industry of government. Take a time frame of 10 years. 10 years, 2009 to 2019. And what you get is this nosedive. This graph that just nosedives throughout. You have a reduction that is visually dramatic. So we have this verifiable truth in data that Puerto Rico's government has actually been getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller throughout at least the 10-year time frame that I'm looking at. Meanwhile, Puerto Rico's debt has gotten larger, and the economy isn't getting any better. So what does this mean? Even though Puerto Rico's government has been getting smaller and smaller and smaller, the problem doesn't seem to be getting any better. That's a simple way of reducing this. The Oversight Board seems to want to highlight Puerto Rico's government size as one of the reasons why the situation has gotten so bad. But the data doesn't really correlate. It doesn't reflect that idea, because if the government's getting smaller and the size of the government, how big the government is one of the reasons why the economy isn't doing so well. If you start reducing the government, at least you're looking at a 10-year lapse, you would be seeing then a positive reflection in the economy. But you really necessarily don't. So I encourage everyone watching to please do this with everything the Oversight Board says and everything anyone else says, really. Look at the data. Look for experts in this in whatever subject that you're looking for, and really compare it to the narrative, because the narrative that's been sold in Puerto Rico through the Oversight Board is a narrative that tries to signal out certain elements of Puerto Rico But when you look at it, you look, for example, at the size of the government, it doesn't really support their idea. It doesn't really support their argument. It seems to me that their plan, the one that they're presenting, is more based on ideology than it would be on data. Well, that's going to be it for today. And thank you so much for joining in, and I'll chat you next time. And as always, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Y que viva Puerto Rico.